A shy cleaner witnessed something that would shake an entire city to its core. What began as an ordinary night shift turned into a moral crisis that would test the limits of courage. Nobody expected the quiet person who mopped their floors to become the city's unlikely hero. This is the story of how the most overlooked person in the building brought down a criminal empire. What happened next left the entire city speechless. In a gleaming downtown skyscraper that pierced the night sky like a monument to power and wealth, Maria Diaz moved like a shadow through empty hallways. For 3 long years, she'd meticulously cleaned the prestigious offices of Meridian Enterprises while executives slept soundly in their sprawling suburban mansions. No one truly noticed her. Not the security guards who barely offered a cursory nod. Not the late-working executives who walked past as if she were merely another piece of office furniture. Maria preferred this cloak of anonymity. Her precarious immigrant status made her naturally cautious. Her inherent shyness transformed her into someone virtually invisible in the eyes of the powerful. "Good evening, Miss Maria," said Raymond, the night security guard on the executive floor, one of the rare souls who acknowledged her existence in this corporate fortress. She smiled faintly in return, clutching her weathered cleaning cart tighter, the familiar scent of industrial disinfectant wafting around her like a shield. But invisibility, Maria had learned over the years, comes with unexpected advantages. People speak freely and carelessly when they believe no one is listening to their words. They leave sensitive documents in plain sight when they're convinced no one important can read them. They hold confidential meetings behind glass doors when they assume no one worthy of concern is watching their actions. That fateful Tuesday night in October, Maria was diligently polishing the spotless glass conference room doors on the 47th floor, the exclusive executive level, when heated voices erupted from inside the supposedly empty room. Through the narrow crack between the heavy doors, she saw an unexpected gathering. Mayor Richard Hamilton, Police Commissioner James Sullivan, and Meridian's ruthless CEO Victor Crane huddled intensely around financial documents spread across the table like a roadmap to secrets. "These offshore accounts are completely untraceable," Crane said with smug confidence, sliding papers across the polished mahogany table. "The construction contracts will flow seamlessly through 7 different shell companies before reaching their destinations. Your substantial cut is already deposited exactly where we discussed. Untouchable." Maria froze in place, her cleaning cloth suspended mid-wipe, barely daring to breathe as the conversation unfolded before her. The mayor laughed, a cold, calculated sound that sent shivers racing down her spine and chilled her blood. "And what about those pesky buildings? Inspectors?" Mayor Hamilton asked, loosening his designer tie with manicured fingers. "The last thing we need is some overzealous bureaucrat questioning our materials or methods." "Completely taken care of," Commissioner Sullivan replied with dismissive certainty, tapping his gold-plated pen against the table. "I've personally reassigned anyone who might look too closely at the materials or structural specifications. We'll save millions on the inferior concrete alone. No one who matters will ever know the difference." Maria's heart thundered violently against her ribs, each beat echoing in her ears like a warning drum. The new community center being constructed in her struggling immigrant neighborhood, the one being built by Meridian with great public fanfare, was deliberately cutting corners on critical safety inspections. Her sister's 3 young children would play there daily after school. Her elderly neighbors would gather there for community events. The entire neighborhood had celebrated this rare investment in their forgotten corner of the city. As the horrifying implications washed over her, Maria unconsciously stepped backward, her trembling hands losing their grip. Her cleaning cart bumped loudly against the wall. the sound reverberating through the hushed corridor like a gunshot. The voices inside instantly fell silent, replaced by the scraping of chair legs against marble flooring. "Is someone there?" Crane called out sharply, his voice laced with unmistakable menace. Mariah grabbed her cart with shaking hands and hurried down the hallway, her soft-soled shoes squeaking betrayingly against the polished floor as panic surged through her veins. She rounded the corner just as the conference room doors flew open. Praying desperately, they hadn't seen her face or recognized the small, hunched figure who cleaned their offices night after night. Ducking into a supply closet, Maria pressed herself against the wall, heart racing as footsteps approached and then faded. Tears welled in her eyes as the magnitude of what she'd witnessed crashed over her. What could someone like her, undocumented, powerless, invisible, possibly do against the three most influential men in the city? But what they didn't know was that being invisible had given her a power no one expected. The power to witness their darkest secrets and perhaps, despite her fear, the unexpected courage to expose them. For 3 agonizing days, Maria couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her heavy eyelids, she heard the mayor's cold, calculating laugh echoing in her mind. Saw the commissioner's dismissive wave as he casually condemned an entire community to danger with nothing more than a flick of his wrist. The crushing weight of knowledge pressed down on her chest like a massive stone, making each breath a conscious effort. In her tiny one-bedroom apartment on the east side, a modest space she'd worked so hard to afford, Maria paced restlessly across the worn linoleum floor, pattern faded from years of careful cleaning. The morning news played softly in the background. Mayor Richard Hamilton smiling broadly at a press conference, his tailored suit immaculate as he ceremoniously cut a red ribbon at the community center construction site, flanked by nodding officials and applauding supporters. This center represents our unwavering commitment to every neighborhood, every citizen in our great city, he proclaimed with practiced sincerity, his perfectly white teeth flashing beneath the harsh camera lights. "No community left behind, that's my promise to you." "Liar," Maria whispered, her fingers trembling violently as she clutched her chipped coffee mug, the bitter liquid inside growing cold. "Mentiroso." The Spanish word felt more satisfying, more true to the depth of her contempt. Her younger sister Elena called just after noon, her voice bubbling with excitement about the center's rapid progress. "Mama says you look sick, Maria. Are you eating properly?" she asked, concern threading through her words. "The kids can't wait for the new playground. Miguel is already talking about basketball leagues, and little Sophia keeps asking when she can take dance classes there. It's all they talk about at dinner." Maria's throat tightened painfully, emotion threatening to overwhelm her carefully maintained composure. Miguel, her 10-year-old nephew with the bright, intelligent eyes and infectious laugh that could light up even her darkest days. Sophia, just 7, with dreams of becoming a ballerina. She imagined them playing beneath compromised beams, running across floors built with substandard materials that could fail catastrophically without warning. The thought made her physically ill. "I'm fine," she lied, forcing steadiness into her voice. "Just tired from work. Extra shifts this week." After hanging up, Maria sat at her small kitchen table, hands wrapped around her mug, staring at the faded photograph of her parents back in Guatemala. What would they tell her to do? Her father had always emphasized honesty and integrity above all else, even when it cost him his government job for refusing to participate in corruption. Was that strength of character in her blood too? By dawn, Maria had made her decision. She would report what she'd heard, Surely there were authorities beyond the corrupt commissioner, systems in place to protect innocent people from such blatant disregard for safety. This was America, after all. The country of laws and justice she had sacrificed everything to reach. The next morning, with shaking fingers, she called the city's building inspection office, carefully blocking her number first. Building safety and compliance. How may I direct your call? A receptionist answered. I need to report serious safety violations at the Eastside Community Center construction project, she said, her accent thickening with nervousness, despite her efforts to speak clearly. One moment. After a brief hold, a man's voice came on the line. Compliance Department, this is Kevin speaking. I need to report dangerous safety violations, Maria repeated, clutching the phone tightly. At the new community center on East Madison Street. Do you have documentation of these violations? The bored voice asked, the sound of keyboard clicking in the background. No, but I overheard the mayor and police commissioner Sullivan discussing. Ma'am? The voice interrupted, suddenly more attentive but distinctly skeptical. We don't investigate based on hearsay, especially anonymous calls involving city officials. That's a serious accusation. Do you have any actual evidence? They are using inferior materials, Maria insisted, frustration building. The safety inspections are being falsified. And how exactly would you know this? The tone had shifted from bored to condescending. I heard them discussing it. I was there. A long pause followed. Look, file a written complaint with specific violations if you have legitimate concerns. Include your contact information so we can follow up. Otherwise, there's nothing we can do. 3 more calls to different departments throughout the day yielded similar results. The county inspector's office suggested she contact the police. The state regulatory board transferred her twice before someone explained they only investigated after incidents occurred. A construction industry whistleblower hotline took her information but warned that without documentation or first-hand knowledge of specific violations, no action would likely be taken. Without proof, without a name, without legal status, she was as invisible to bureaucracy as she was to the executives whose offices she cleaned each night. The system wasn't designed for people like her to challenge people like them. That evening, as Maria prepared for her shift at Meridian Enterprises, she stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at her seemed different somehow. Her eyes harder, more determined. She carefully pinned her name badge to her gray uniform and pulled her dark hair back into a tight, practical bun. Tonight, she would no longer be invisible by choice. She moved through the building with new purpose, pushing her cleaning cart with quiet determination. She began paying meticulous attention to schedules, noting which executives stayed latest, observing where sensitive documents were kept. She noticed the security camera blind spots she'd never considered before, mentally mapping them throughout the executive floor. She memorized the keypad codes she'd seen punched in countless times while she stood unnoticed nearby, recording them in a small notebook hidden in her uniform pocket. In the executive bathroom she was cleaning just before midnight, Maria overheard 2 Meridian vice presidents speaking in low tones, unaware of her presence in the supply closet. Crane's playing with fire on this community center deal, one said, the sound of running, water accompanying his words as he washed his hands. Those materials wouldn't pass inspection in a third world country. I saw the supply manifests myself. That's why we have the commissioner in our pocket. The other laughed carelessly. Besides, it's just the East Side. Who's going to complain? The immigrants? The service workers? They should be grateful for anything they get. Still, if this ever came to light, it won't. The paper trail is buried in subsidiaries. The inspectors are handled. Relax. Their words burned like acid in Maria's stomach as she pressed herself against the closet wall. Cleaning supplies clutched tightly against her chest. She was nothing to them. Less than nothing. Her entire community was expendable, unworthy of even basic safety considerations. The casual cruelty of their dismissal hurt more than she expected. After her shift ended at 4 a.m., Maria sat alone on the nearly empty bus home, watching the city lights blur through the rain-streaked window. The driver, an older man who recognized her from her regular schedule, nodded sympathetically at her exhausted expression. She thought about her family, about her neighbors, about the children who would play in that death trap of a building. She thought about her precarious status in this country, about the comfortable, if modest life she'd built despite all odds, about how easily it could all be taken away with a single phone call to immigration authorities. Reporting through official channels had failed spectacularly. Going public meant risking everything: her job, her safety, possibly even deportation. The powerful men she was up against could destroy her with a casual word to the right person. Who would believe a cleaning woman over the mayor of a major city? Who would protect her when the police commissioner himself was corrupt to the core? The American dream she had sacrificed so much to pursue suddenly seemed like a cruel joke. As the bus pulled up to her stop, the first hints of dawn breaking on the horizon, Maria made the second decision of her life that terrified her to her core. She would not be silenced. She would not look away. She would gather evidence, irrefutable proof so compelling that it couldn't be ignored or dismissed, no matter who presented it. That night, she slept for the first time in days. But her dreams were troubled and chaotic. She saw herself standing alone before a massive tidal wave of power and corruption, armed with nothing but the truth and her own determination. In the dream, the wave towered above her, ready to crash down and sweep her away into nothingness. But instead of running, Dream Maria stood her ground, chin raised, eyes defiant. She woke with tears on her face, but a strange sense of clarity. She spent the day researching on her phone, learning about construction materials, building codes, structural integrity requirements. She read about load-bearing capacities and concrete quality standards until her eyes burned. She called her cousin Miguel, who worked in construction, asking careful questions about what documents would show material substitutions, what evidence would be most damning. "Why do you want to know these things, Maria?" he asked, suspicious. "A friend has concerns about a building project," she replied vaguely. "I'm trying to help." That evening, Maria arrived at work with a small digital camera hidden in her uniform pocket and a new USB drive tucked securely into her bra. She had spent nearly a day's wages on these items at an electronics store far from her neighborhood. Her hands trembled slightly as she pushed her cleaning cart into the elevator, nodding politely at the night security guard who barely glanced up from his crossword puzzle. "You can do this," she whispered to herself as the elevator doors closed, sealing her commitment. For Miguel, for Sophia, for everyone who has no voice. As the elevator climbed toward the executive floor, Maria thought about her father's favorite saying, "La verdad no teme a la luz." Truth does not fear the light. Tonight, she would begin shining that light into very dark corners. The elevator doors opened to the 47th floor, and Maria stepped out, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. They thought their position and power made them untouchable. They thought gathering evidence would be impossible for someone like her. They had no idea what was coming for them next. The quiet determination of a woman who had nothing left to lose but her integrity. As she pushed her cart down the silent hallway, The city lights glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Maria felt something she hadn't experienced in years: purpose. And perhaps, if she was very careful and very brave, she might just become the most dangerous kind of witness. The kind no one ever noticed until it was too late. The executive floor of Meridian Enterprises was eerily quiet at 2:17 a.m. The only sounds the distant hum of the HVAC system and the soft squeak of Maria's cleaning cart wheels against the polished marble floors. She moved methodically through her cleaning routine, her outward calm masking the thundering of her heart beneath her gray uniform. Tonight would be different from the thousands of nights that had come before. Tonight, she wasn't just cleaning. She was hunting for truth in a fortress of deception. For 2 painstaking weeks, she had been carefully observing, learning the rhythms and patterns of the night security guards, noting which executives consistently worked late and which offices might contain the evidence she needed. She'd identified Victor Crane's executive suite as her primary target. The CEO's files would surely contain the most damning information about the community center project. His corner office, with its mahogany doors and gold nameplate, had always been off-limits to cleaning staff while he was away. A peculiarity that now seemed less about privacy and more about secrecy. Maria pushed her cleaning cart to the end of the hallway, positioning it strategically near the security camera's blind spot she had discovered during her careful observations. The night guard, Harold, was predictable in his routine. A bathroom break at 2:15 a.m., followed by a slow walk around the perimeter that took exactly 12 minutes. She had timed it repeatedly, night after night, pretending to clean the same areas while surreptitiously checking her watch. As if on cue, Harold rose from his desk, stretching his back with an audible groan before heading toward the restroom, his security keycard swinging from a lanyard around his neck. Maria waited until the bathroom door closed behind him, then moved swiftly toward Crane's office. Her heart pounding so loudly, she feared it might somehow trigger the building's alarm system. The keypad beside Crane's door required a 6-digit access code, one she had memorized by watching from the corner of her eye while polishing nearby glass surfaces. Her fingers trembled slightly as she punched in the numbers. 478923. The light flashed green, accompanied by the softest of beeps. The door unlocked with a gentle click that nevertheless seemed deafening in the silent hallway. Maria slipped inside, closing the door silently behind her. Crane's office was massive, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the sleeping city, lights twinkling like earthbound stars in the distance. The room smelled of expensive leather and the faint trace of the CEO's distinctive cologne. She pulled on latex gloves from her pocket, careful not to leave fingerprints, and moved directly to his computer. The machine was locked, as expected, but that wasn't her target tonight. Technology could be traced. Paper was safer. Instead, she went to the credenza behind his imposing desk, where she had observed him storing documents when she was permitted to clean his office during his rare vacations. The drawers were locked, but Maria had come prepared. From her pocket, she withdrew a small set of pics her cousin had reluctantly provided after she'd invented a story about losing her filing cabinet keys. "It's not as easy as they make it look in movies, Prima," he had warned, hesitant to share the tools of what he called his misspent youth. "It takes practice, patience." But Maria had practiced for hours on her own locked drawer at home, her fingers growing more confident with each attempt. Now, her hands worked the simple lock with careful precision, feeling for the subtle resistance of the pins inside. After a minute of tense manipulation, she felt the satisfying click of the mechanism releasing. Inside the drawer were several folders, neatly labeled and color-coded. She quickly photographed each one with her small digital camera, her hands steady despite her fear. Most contained routine business documents, quarterly projections, marketing strategies, personnel reports. But in the back of the drawer, she found what she was looking for, a thick folder labeled East Side Project, Financial, Confidential. Inside were spreadsheets comparing costs, one column labeled Reported Materials, and another Actual Materials. The discrepancies were staggering and methodical. Where the public documents showed steel reinforcement bars meeting code requirements at $7.50 per foot, the actual materials were substandard impo arts costing only $7.50 per foot. The actual materials were substandard imports costing only $7.50 per foot. The actual materials were substandard impo RDX costing only $2.15. The concrete mixture had been diluted with excessive sand, reducing costs by 60%, while critically weakening its load-bearing capacity. Support beams were fewer and thinner than required by city building codes. Fire-resistant materials had been completely eliminated from interior walls. Mariah photographed every page, her heart racing but her hands remarkably steady. The evidence was damning. Proof of deliberate, systematic fraud that endangered hundreds of lives daily once the center opened. One document particularly caught her attention: a liability waiver that had been secretly inserted into the fine print of the usage agreements that community members would sign. It essentially absolved Meridian of responsibility for structural incidents, a euphemism that chilled Maria to her core. A noise in the hallway made her freeze, the camera suspended motionless above the documents. Footsteps approached the office door, then passed by without pausing. Mariah exhaled slowly, realizing she had only minutes before Harold completed his rounds and returned to his station with a clear view of Crane's office door. She carefully replaced the folders exactly as she had found them, memorizing their precise order and position. She relocked the drawer, wiped down any surfaces she had touched, and ensured the chair was positioned exactly as she had found it. As she prepared to leave, her eye caught a yellow sticky note on Crane's desk calendar. Scrawled in hasty handwriting were the words, "Site inspection override. Sullivan handling personally. 10 a.m. Thursday. Confirm final payments cleared offshore. Tomorrow." The corrupt commissioner would be at the construction site tomorrow, presumably to falsify inspection reports and finalize their criminal conspiracy. Maria photographed the note, then slipped out of the office as silently as she had entered, her pulse racing but her movements deliberate and controlled. She had just resumed cleaning the hallway when Harold returned, nodding absently in her direction as he settled back at his security desk. Her hands shook slightly as she polished the same glass door for the third time, but the security guard noticed nothing unusual about the quiet cleaning woman who had become part of the building's background noise. "All quiet tonight, Maria?" Harold asked, not looking up from the sports magazine he'd pulled from his desk drawer. "Yes, very quiet," she replied, her voice remarkably steady. "Just the usual." Back in her apartment the next morning, Maria transferred the photos to her laptop, organizing them into folders and backing them up onto the USB drive she kept hidden inside a hollowed-out book on her shelf. The evidence was clear and comprehensive. But what should she do with it? Going to the authorities had already proven useless. The commissioner was corrupt, the mayor involved, and she had no way of knowing how far the corruption extended. Who could she trust with information that could bring down the city's most powerful figures? Her sister called while she was still deliberating, Elena's cheerful ringtone a stark contrast to the weight of Maria's thoughts. "Maria, you won't believe it. I got a job at the community center." Elena's voice bubbled with excitement, the sounds of her children playing audible in the background. Once construction is finished next month, I'll be working in the daycare center. It's perfect. I can bring the kids with me, save on childcare costs, and the pay is better than the hotel. God is finally answering our prayers. Maria's blood ran cold, her free hand gripping the edge of her kitchen table until her knuckles turned white. Elena, listen to me carefully. That building isn't safe. What are you talking about? Elena's tone shifted from excitement to confusion. The materials they're using. They're cutting corners, using substandard materials that won't hold up. The whole structure could be dangerous. The support beams, the concrete. None of it meets code requirements. There was a long pause before Elena responded, her voice now tinged with concern. Maria, are you sleeping? You sound not like yourself. You've been working too hard. I'm fine. I know things about this project. Bad things. Things that could get people hurt, or worse. How would you know about construction materials? You clean offices. The question held no accusation, just genuine bewilderment. The question hung in the air, unanswerable without revealing everything. How she had spied on the mayor, how she had broken into the CEO's office, how she had evidence that could possibly get her deported or even killed. Maria changed tactics. Just promise me you'll be careful. Maybe look for another job, just in case. The hotel would take you back, wouldn't they? Maria, this job is a blessing from God. Good pay, benefits, close to home, and I can be with the children. I can't just walk away because you have a feeling. We've been praying for an opportunity like this for years. After hanging up, Maria paced her small apartment, the weight of responsibility crushing down on her shoulders. Her sister, her only family in this country besides her niece and nephews, would be working in a death trap. The children of her community would play in spaces held up by insufficient support. Elderly neighbors would gather in rooms where corners had been cut on fire safety. She made her decision. She would go to the construction site during Commissioner Sullivan's visit. Perhaps she could gather more evidence, maybe even photograph the commissioner in the act of falsifying reports. With enough proof, surely someone would listen. A federal agency, perhaps, or the state attorney general's office. Maria dressed carefully the next morning, choosing clothes that wouldn't stand out. Jeans, a navy hoodie, and comfortable sneakers instead of her usual uniform or church clothes. She tucked her hair under a plain baseball cap and wore sunglasses despite the overcast day. In her pocket, her phone was fully charged, its camera ready. Around her neck hung a tourist-style camera to make her photography seem less suspicious. The East Side Community Center construction site buzzed with activity when Maria arrived shortly before 10 a.m. Workers in hard hats and yellow vests moved purposefully around the skeletal structure, which had already risen 3 stories high, with the framework of a 4th floor taking shape. Steel beams formed a complex lattice against the gray sky, while concrete mixers churned continuously near the foundation. A chain-link fence surrounded the perimeter, but the gate stood open for the steady stream of supply trucks and contractor vehicles. Maria slipped in among a group of subcontractors returning from their coffee break, keeping her head down and mimicking their confident stride. Once inside, she spotted a cluster of men in suits near the site office trailer. Commissioner Sullivan among them, his distinctive silver hair and imposing height, making him easy to identify even from a distance. Next to him stood a tall man she recognized as the project manager from Meridian's development division, along with 2 inspectors in white hard hats marked with the city seal. She circled around, keeping her distance while raising her tourist camera occasionally, as if taking casual photos of the impressive construction. In reality, she was zooming in on the group, capturing images of Sullivan examining and signing documents without even reading them. At one point, She clearly photographed him crossing out notations on what appeared to be an inspection form, then initialing the changes, while the Meridian project manager looked on with a satisfied smile. "Hey, you can't be here." A security guard approached suddenly from behind, his expression stern beneath his hard hat. "This is an active construction zone." Maria smiled apologetically, slipping effortlessly into the persona of an enthusiastic community member. "Sorry, my nephew is so excited about the basketball courts. I just wanted to see how it's coming along. The community is so grateful for this investment in our neighborhood. No unauthorized personnel allowed on site. Safety regulations." He gestured toward the exit, his walkie-talkie crackling with static at his hip. As Maria turned to leave, appearing appropriately chastened, she noticed something that made her stomach lurch. A stack of concrete support pillars, waiting to be installed. Even to her untrained eye, they looked wrong. Too thin, with visible air pockets in the concrete and exposed rebar that appeared rusted in places. She quickly snapped several photos before the guard could stop her, pretending to be taking a selfie with the construction in the background. "No pictures," he called out sharply, starting toward her with more urgency. Sorry, just excited about the center," Maria replied, already walking briskly toward the exit, her heart pounding but her exterior calm. From across the site, Commissioner Sullivan looked up at the commotion, his conversation interrupted. For a brief, terrifying moment, his eyes met Maria's across the distance. She quickly looked away, pulling her hood up as she hurried through the gate, fighting the urge to run. Had he recognized her? Maria couldn't be sure, but a chill ran down her spine as she hurried away from the site, resisting the temptation to look back. Sullivan had visited the Meridian offices occasionally for meetings with Crane. Had he ever noticed the woman cleaning the floors during those late-night visits? Most people didn't truly see the cleaning staff, but Sullivan wasn't most people. His position required attention to detail. That evening, Maria didn't go to work. She called in sick for the first time in 3 years, claiming food poisoning, a plausible excuse that wouldn't raise immediate suspicion. Instead, she sat at her kitchen table, spreading out printouts of the photos she'd taken, arranging them in chronological order and by type of evidence. The images told a clear story of corruption and criminal negligence, but she still didn't know who to trust with it. A news segment on the local channel caught her attention as she worked. A perfectly coiffed reporter standing outside City Hall, the American flag fluttering prominently behind her. Mayor Hamilton announced today that the East Side Community Center will open ahead of schedule, thanks to efficient management and streamlined inspection processes. The center is being hailed as a model for future development projects across the city. The camera cut to the mayor, smiling broadly in front of a podium emblazoned with the city seal. This center represents what we can accomplish when government and private enterprise work together seamlessly. The people of the East Side community deserve world-class facilities, and in just 6 weeks, they'll have exactly that. The reporter continued. The mayor also announced that CEO Victor Crane of Meridian Enterprises has been appointed to head the city's new Public-Private Partnership Commission, which will oversee similar development projects throughout the city. Maria stared at the screen in disbelief. They weren't just getting away with endangering one community. They were creating a system to repeat the same corruption citywide. The implications were staggering. Her phone rang suddenly, startling her from her thoughts. Unknown number. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the screen, then answered. "Is this Maria Diaz?" a male voice asked. The accent was slight but familiar, the Spanish-tinged English of someone who had grown up in a bilingual household like her own. Who is this? She countered, suddenly wary. She hadn't given her number to anyone new in months. My name is Daniel Reyes. I'm an investigative reporter with the City Tribune. I received some interesting information about the East Side Community Center project, and your name came up. I'd like to talk with you about what you might know. Maria's heart raced, her palms suddenly slick with sweat. I don't know anything about that project. I think you have the wrong person. I don't think I do, Ms. Diaz. Someone at the construction site today identified you taking photographs. Commissioner Sullivan was quite interested in who you were and why you were there. He seemed to recognize you from somewhere else. The blood drained from Maria's face as her worst fears were confirmed. They knew who she was. The fragile invisibility that had protected her was gone, stripped away in an instant. I have nothing to say, she whispered, ending the call with a trembling finger. Her phone immediately chimed with a text message from the same number. I'm not working with them, Ms. Diaz. I've been investigating Meridian and the mayor for months. You're not the only one who knows something is wrong. If you have evidence, I can help protect you and make sure it reaches the right people. We can expose this together. People's lives are at stake. A second message followed quickly. Check my byline. I broke the story on the housing department corruption last year. 3 officials went to prison. I protect my sources. Maria stared at the messages, her mind racing through impossible calculations of risk and trust. Could she believe this reporter? Was this an elaborate trap set by Sullivan or Crane? Or was this the ally she desperately needed, someone with the platform and credibility to make people listen? She quickly searched his name online, finding numerous investigative pieces with his byline, including the housing department expose he'd mentioned. His most recent article had questioned the miraculous speed of the community center construction, though without specific allegations of wrongdoing. The piece had run 3 weeks ago, then seemingly disappeared from follow-up coverage. A sharp, authoritative knock at her door made her jump, nearly knocking over her cup of cold coffee. Through the peephole, she saw 2 men in dark suits standing in the hallway of her apartment building. One held up a badge, his expression grim and official. Ms. Diaz, police. We'd like to ask you a few questions about an incident at the East Side construction site this morning. In that moment, Maria realized the storm she had feared was no longer gathering on the horizon. It had arrived with full force, and she was standing directly in its path with nowhere to hide. Her phone vibrated again in her hand, with another message from the reporter. Don't talk to anyone official without representation. They're already moving to silence you. I can help. Meet me at St. Anthony's Church in 1 hour. Come through the side entrance. You can trust Father Ignacio. He's my uncle. Maria stared at the message as another knock, louder this time, rattled her door on its hinges. The choice before her was impossible. Open the door to authorities who might be working for the corrupt commissioner, or flee to meet a stranger who might be setting a trap of his own. Either way, her life as she knew it was over. The invisible woman had finally been seen, and now she would discover the true cost of standing in the light. Maria's heart pounded against her ribs as she stared at the door. The police knocked again, more insistent this time. Ms. Diaz, we know you're in there. Please open the door. Her mind raced through her options. If these officers were legitimate, refusing to speak with them would only make her appear guilty. But if they were working for Sullivan or Crane, opening that door could mean the end of everything. She glanced at the fire escape visible through her kitchen window, a possible route of escape. Then her eyes fell on the photos spread across her table, evidence that could save lives. She couldn't leave it behind. Making her decision, Maria quickly gathered the photos and her laptop, shoving them into her backpack along with the USB drive from its hiding place. She grabbed her passport, emergency cash, and a change of clothes, moving with the efficiency of someone who had fled before. "One moment, please." She called toward the door, buying time as she slipped on her jacket and shouldered her backpack. Through the kitchen window, Maria climbed onto the fire escape, the metal creaking softly beneath her weight. She descended as quickly as she dared, the cold iron rails biting into her palms. From the alley below, she heard the muffled sound of her apartment door being forced open. She dropped the final few feet to the ground and hurried away from her building, keeping to the shadows. St. Anthony's Church was 15 blocks away. Too far to walk quickly, but taking public transportation seemed risky. She opted for a middle path, walking 8 blocks before hailing a taxi from a busy intersection where she wouldn't stand out. "St. Anthony's, please," she told the driver, trying to keep her voice steady. As the taxi pulled away, she glanced back, half expecting to see the suited men in pursuit. The street behind them remained ordinary, but Maria knew appearances could be deceiving. The church loomed against the darkening sky, its stone facade and stained glass windows illuminated by strategically placed spotlights. Maria paid the driver and circled around to the side entrance as instructed. The heavy wooden door was unlocked. Inside, the church was hushed and dim, scented with incense and beeswax candles. A few parishioners knelt in prayer among the pews, their heads bowed. Maria hadn't been inside a church since her mother's funeral, but the familiar environment brought an unexpected sense of comfort. "Miss Diaz?" She turned to find an older man in priest's clothing regarding her with kind but shrewd eyes. "Father Ignacio?" she asked hesitantly. He nodded. Daniel called ahead. "Come with me, please." He led her through a side door and down a corridor to a small office. Inside, a man in his early 30s stood as they entered. He had the lean build of a runner and observant eyes that took in everything about Maria in a single glance. "Ms. Diaz, I'm Daniel Reyes." He extended his hand. "Thank you for trusting us enough to come." Maria didn't take his hand immediately. "I haven't decided to trust you yet." Daniel nodded, lowering his hand without offense. "That's fair. 2 men claiming to be police officers just broke into your apartment without a warrant. Trust should be earned, not assumed." The casual mention of what had just happened at her apartment confirmed her worst fears. "How do you know that?" "I have a source inside the department." Daniel gestured to a chair. "Please sit. You're safe here. The church has been a sanctuary for centuries." Father Ignacio nodded. "No one will search for you here, hija. This room doesn't appear on any building plans. It was created during Prohibition to hide those in need." Maria sat cautiously, keeping her backpack on her lap. "How did you know I was at the construction site? Who told you my name?" Daniel sat across from her. "A construction worker named Luis Vega. He's my cousin. He recognized you because his mother attends the same church as your sister. He saw Sullivan's reaction when he spotted you and called me immediately after. Sullivan had the site manager pull your image from security footage and made some calls. The explanation was detailed enough to be plausible, but Maria remained guarded. What do you want from me? The same thing you want. To expose the corruption behind the East Side Center before people get hurt. Daniel leaned forward. I've been investigating Meridian and the mayor for months, but I haven't been able to get concrete evidence. Sources keep disappearing or changing their stories. I think you might have what I need to break this wide open. And what do I get in return? Maria asked bluntly. Protection, a platform, justice. Daniel's expression was earnest. And my word that I'll keep your identity confidential, if that's what you want. Father Ignacio placed a gentle hand on Maria's shoulder. Daniel is a good man, Maria. He helped expose the corruption that was poisoning the water in the West Side neighborhood last year. Many children would have been permanently harmed if not for his reporting. Maria hesitated, then slowly unzipped her backpack. I have photos, documents, evidence of fraud and criminal negligence. She pulled out her laptop. The materials they're using are dangerous. People could die when that building fails, and it will fail. Daniel's eyes widened as Maria showed him the photos and documents. This is comprehensive. How did you get access to these files? I'm invisible, Maria said simply. I clean the executive offices at Meridian. No one notices the cleaning lady. No one thinks twice about what she might see or hear. Understanding dawned in Daniel's eyes. The perfect witness. For the next hour, Maria walked Daniel through everything she had discovered. The fraudulent material substitutions, the falsified inspection reports, the offshore payments. Daniel took careful notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly letting Maria tell her story uninterrupted. This is enough to launch an investigation, Daniel said finally. But we need to move carefully. These are powerful people with a lot to lose. They've already demonstrated they're willing to break the law to protect themselves. What happens now? Maria asked, suddenly feeling the weight of her exhaustion. Father Ignacio answered. Now, you rest. We have rooms here where people in need can stay. Tomorrow, we make plans. I can't stay here, Maria protested. I have work. You can't go back to work, Daniel interrupted gently. They know who you are now. It's not safe. The reality of her situation hit Maria like a physical blow. Everything I've built here, my apartment, my job, my life, it's not forever, Father Ignacio assured her, just until we can ensure your safety. Maria thought of her sister, her nephews, her neighbors, all the people who would use that death trap of a building. What about the center? Construction continues while we make plans. The opening is in 6 weeks. Daniel nodded grimly. That's why we need to work quickly. I have a contact at the State Attorney General's office who isn't connected to the city's power structure. With your evidence, we might be able to get an emergency stop work order. Might? Maria challenged. Nothing is certain when going against people this powerful, Daniel admitted. But we have truth on our side. Sometimes, that's enough. Father Ignacio showed Maria to a small but clean room with a narrow bed, a desk, and a crucifix on the wall. Rest, Hija. God brought you to us for a reason. Your courage will not be wasted. After they left, Maria sat on the edge of the bed, the events of the day washing over her in waves. She had lost everything, her home, her job, her security, and gained only uncertainty and danger. Yet beneath her fear ran a current of something unexpected. Purpose. For the first time since coming to this country, she wasn't just surviving. She was fighting for something larger than herself. She thought of the mayor's smiling face on television, of Sullivan's cold eyes at the construction site, of Crane's casual disregard for the lives of those people in the East Side. Anger rose in her chest, burning away some of her fear. You thought I was nothing, she whispered to the empty room. You thought no one would see. But I saw everything. Maria lay down on the unfamiliar bed, not bothering to undress. Despite her exhaustion, sleep seemed impossible with her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. What if Daniel betrayed her? What if the church wasn't as safe as they claimed? What if Sullivan's reach extended even here? A soft knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. Father Ignacio stood there with a steaming mug. "Chamomile tea," he explained. "My mother always said it calms the spirit." Maria accepted the mug gratefully. "Thank you, Father." "May I?" He gestured to the chair beside her bed. Maria nodded, and the priest sat down with a slight groan. "These old knees," he explained with a small smile. "Daniel told me more about what you've discovered. Your courage is remarkable." Maria shook her head. "It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like fear and desperation." "True courage often does," the priest said gently. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action in the face of it." He paused, studying her face. "You're worried about your sister?" Maria looked up in surprise. "How did you know?" "When we're in danger, we rarely fear most for ourselves. It's those we love who occupy our thoughts." Father Ignacio folded his weathered hands in his lap. "We can get a message to her. Let her know you're safe." "No," Maria said quickly. "The less she knows, the safer she'll be. If they question her, I want her to be able to honestly say she doesn't know where I am or what I'm doing." Father Ignacio nodded. "Wise, but difficult." "Everything about this is difficult," Maria admitted, sipping the tea. It was sweet and soothing. "I didn't want any of this. I just wanted to live my life, do my job, help my family. I never wanted to be what did Daniel call me? A witness. And yet, that's precisely what you are, a witness to injustice. Many see, few act." The priest's eyes were kind but penetrating. "In my experience, God rarely calls the equipped. He equips those he calls." Maria wasn't sure she believed in that kind of divine intervention, but the sentiment offered a strange comfort nonetheless. "I hope you're right, Father. Because right now, I feel very unequipped. Rest tonight. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges." Father Ignacio stood. "You're not alone in this fight, Maria. Remember that." After he left, Maria finished her tea and finally lay down. Despite her racing thoughts, exhaustion soon pulled her into a fitful sleep, filled with dreams of crumbling buildings and faceless men in suits pursuing her through endless corridors. She woke early the next morning to the sound of church bells. For a moment, she was disoriented, the unfamiliar room confusing her sleep-addled mind. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back, and with them, a renewed sense of resolve. A fresh set of clothes, simple jeans and a sweater that looked close to her size, had been left outside her door, along with a toothbrush and basic toiletries. After washing up in the shared bathroom down the hall, Maria made her way to the church kitchen, where she found Daniel and Father Ignacio deep in conversation over coffee and pastries. "Good morning," Daniel greeted her. "Coffee? It's not great, but it's strong." Maria accepted a mug and sat down. "What's the plan?" "Direct," Daniel smiled. "I like that." His expression turned serious. "I spoke with my contact at the Attorney General's office last night. She's willing to meet with us today, unofficially, to start. If she believes your evidence is compelling, she can begin building a case." "How do we know she isn't connected to the mayor or Meridian?" Maria asked. "Gabriela Ortiz has built her career taking down corrupt officials," Daniel explained. "She's been passed over for promotion multiple times because she refuses to play political games. If there's anyone in the system we can trust, it's her." Maria considered this. "And if she doesn't think the evidence is strong enough?" Daniel and Father Ignacio exchanged glances. "Then we pursue other avenues," Daniel said carefully. I have contacts at federal agencies. The FBI has jurisdiction over public corruption cases. But that would take time, Maria guessed. Time we don't have before the center opens. Yes, Daniel admitted. Which is why I'm also preparing a story. If legal channels move too slowly, we go public. It won't stop construction immediately, but the public pressure might force an investigation. And what happens to me if we go public? Maria asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. Daniel's expression was grave. That depends on how much you want to reveal. You could be an anonymous source, or you could go on record. The latter provides more credibility, but also more risk. They already know it's me, Maria pointed out. The police, or whoever they were, came to my apartment. That doesn't mean they have enough to connect you to the evidence, Daniel countered. Right now, they know you were taking pictures at the construction site. They suspect you know something, but they don't know what or how much. Father Ignacio leaned forward. Your safety must be our primary concern, Maria. These people have already demonstrated they have no regard for human life. A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. Maria sipped her coffee, considering her options. None were good, but doing nothing was unthinkable. When do we meet with this Gabriela Ortiz? She finally asked. 2:00, Daniel replied. She's coming here, neutral ground. Father Ignacio will be present as a witness. Maria nodded. Then I have a few hours to organize my evidence and prepare what I'll say. She stood, her decision made. I need to make copies of everything. If something happens to me, the evidence can't disappear too. Daniel's expression softened with respect. I'll get you what you need. As Maria turned to leave, Father Ignacio called after her. Maria, there's something else you should know. His tone made her turn back. Your sister called the church office this morning, looking for you. Maria's heart stuttered. How did she know to call here? She didn't, not exactly. She's been calling churches across the city. Apparently, the men who came to your apartment told her you were in trouble. They suggested you might seek sanctuary in a church. They're using her to find me, Maria realized, a chill running through her. Daniel nodded grimly. It's a common tactic. They know family is often the weak link. What did you tell her? Maria asked Father Ignacio. Nothing about your presence here, he assured her. But I offered to take a message in case you made contact with us. She was very upset, Maria. She said the men claimed you were involved in criminal activity, that you had stolen confidential documents from your employer. The accusation shouldn't have surprised Maria, but it still stung. They're trying to turn her against me. Perhaps, Father Ignacio agreed, but she didn't seem to believe them. She just wants to know you're safe. Maria closed her eyes briefly, the weight of her sister's worry adding to her burden. Tell her. Tell her I'm safe if she calls again. Nothing more. As she walked back to her room, Maria felt the walls closing in. They were already using her family against her. How long before they found more leverage? How long before her sister's new job at the community center became a point of pressure? In her room, Maria spread her evidence across the small desk and began organizing it methodically. The facts were clear, the danger undeniable. She had to make Gabriela Ortiz understand what was at stake. Not just corruption, but lives. Outside the church, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up across the street, its engine idling. Inside, a man raised a camera with a telephoto lens and began photographing everyone entering or leaving St. Anthony's. His particular attention focused on the unassuming side entrance that didn't appear on any official building plans. The storm Maria had feared wasn't just gathering anymore. It had arrived, and its dark clouds were spreading across every aspect of her life. But for the first time, she wasn't just running from the tempest. She was preparing to face it head-on, armed with the most dangerous weapon of all, the truth that powerful men had tried to bury. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second echoing loudly in the small office of St. Anthony's Church. Maria sat at the desk, her laptop open, and the photos of evidence spread out around her like a chaotic map of corruption. The weight of what she was about to do hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension that made her heart race. Daniel was pacing the room, occasionally glancing at his watch. "We need to head out soon," he said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "Gabriella will be here in less than 30 minutes. Maria nodded, trying to appear calm. "I'm ready." Yet inside, she felt a whirlpool of fear and determination. This was the moment she had been waiting for. But it was also the moment that could change everything: her life, her future, her family's safety. As she organized her evidence, the door opened softly. Father Ignacio entered, his expression serious. "Maria, I just spoke with Gabriela Ortiz. She's on her way. I also asked Daniel to remind you that your safety is paramount. You don't have to do this if you're not ready." "I am ready," Maria insisted, meeting the priest's gaze. "People are in danger. I can't stand by while they open that center knowing what I know." Father Ignacio nodded, the lines on his face deepening with concern. "Then remember to stay strong. You hold the truth, and that is powerful. But truth can also make us vulnerable." "I understand," Maria replied, her voice firm. "I just want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. If I can stop it, then I have to try." Father Ignacio placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You are brave, Maria. Do not forget that." A few minutes later, the door opened again, and a woman stepped in, her presence commanding yet approachable. Gabriela Ortiz was in her late 30s, with dark hair pulled back into a neat bun, wearing a simple but professional blazer over a crisp white blouse. Her eyes were sharp and focused, and she immediately assessed the room, taking in the scattered evidence and the tension in the air. "Maria Diaz?" Gabriela asked, her voice steady. "Yes," Maria replied, rising to shake her hand. "Thank you for meeting with us." Gabriela nodded, her grip firm. "I've read about your situation. Daniel has given me a brief overview, but I'd like to hear it directly from you. Let's sit." They gathered around the small table, Maria feeling the weight of their gazes upon her. She took a deep breath, ready to unearth the truth that had been buried for far too long. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Ortiz," Maria began. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I have evidence of serious fraud connected to the East Side Community Center project. I work at Meridian Enterprises, and over the past few weeks, I've gathered photos and documents that prove they've been using substandard materials and falsifying inspection reports." Gabriela leaned in, her eyes narrowing with interest. "What kind of materials? Are there specific safety violations we should be concerned about?" Maria spread the photos across the table, each one meticulously documenting the discrepancies she had uncovered. "Here, this is a spreadsheet comparing the reported materials versus the actual materials used. They're cutting costs by using inferior products. The concrete is diluted, the steel reinforcements are inadequate, and fire safety measures have been completely ignored." Gabriela picked up a photo and studied it closely. "This is serious, Maria. If what you're saying is true, It could endanger hundreds of lives once the center opens. It's worse than that, Maria continued, her voice growing stronger. I overheard conversations between the mayor and the police commissioner discussing how they would handle inspections, and I found documents indicating they planned to override safety measures to expedite construction. Daniel leaned forward, intrigued. I need to know if you have any direct evidence linking the mayor or the commissioner to the fraudulent activities. Maria nodded, pulling out another document. This is a note from Victor Crane's office, detailing a request for a site inspection override, signed by Commissioner Sullivan. It clearly states that he will handle the inspection personally, bypassing standard procedures. This is the kind of information that could make a strong case for immediate action. Gabriella took the document, flipping it over to examine the details. This could be the smoking gun we need. She looked back at Maria. But we need to move quickly. If they catch wind of this, they will do everything they can to bury it. Maria felt the weight of her words settle heavily on her shoulders. What happens if they find out it's me who leaked this information? Gabriella's expression softened. We'll do everything we can to protect you. But you must understand, once we go public, there's no turning back. Your life will change, and you will need to be prepared for the fallout. I understand, Maria said, determination flooding her. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. Daniel smiled, admiration in his eyes. You're stronger than you know, Maria. We'll make sure you have the protection you need. But first, we need to get this evidence in front of someone who can take action. Gabriella stood, her resolve firm. Let's head to my office. I have a secure location where we can present your evidence without anyone knowing. We'll prepare a formal statement and approach the Attorney General together. Maria followed them, adrenaline coursing through her veins. As they left the church, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see the black SUV again. The trio made their way to Gabriella's office, a modest but well-guarded space in a nearby government building. Inside, the atmosphere shifted from the warm refuge of the church to a stark, professional environment. Gabriella directed them to a conference room, where she set up a projector to display Maria's evidence. Let's go through this step by step, Gabriella instructed, her demeanor all business now. We need to present a clear, cohesive case for why action must be taken immediately. As Maria outlined her findings, she felt a mix of empowerment and fear. This was what she had worked for, the culmination of her efforts to protect her community. But with each point she made, the reality of the danger they faced loomed larger in her mind. She could feel the weight of their lives resting on her shoulders. Daniel interjected with clarifying questions, helping to strengthen Maria's presentation. Gabriella took notes, her brow furrowed in concentration. They worked together seamlessly, the three of them united by a single purpose. After what felt like hours, they concluded the presentation. Gabriella leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. This is strong, Maria. I believe we have enough to approach the Attorney General, but we need to act fast. Maria nodded, her resolve hardening. What's our next step? Gabriella stood, her expression shifting to one of determination. I'll contact the Attorney General's office and set up a meeting. In the meantime, we need to ensure your safety. I suggest you stay with Father Ignacio until we have a plan in place. What about my sister? Maria asked, anxiety creeping back in. I can't just leave her in the dark. Gabriella hesitated. We can send her a message, but it's vital that we don't put her in danger. If they're already watching you, they might turn their attention to her. Maria bit her lip, the weight of the choice heavy upon her. I can't let them use her against me. She deserves to know I'm safe. Then we'll find a way to reassure her without revealing too much, Gabriella promised. But you must be cautious. Just then, Maria's phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking the tension in the room. She pulled it out to find a text from her sister. Elena, where are you? I'm worried. The police came back to the house. They said they were looking for you. Maria's heart raced. They're at my sister's house again. Gabriella's expression turned serious. We need to act fast. They're clearly trying to intimidate her into revealing your location. I can't let them do that, Maria said, her voice trembling. Then let's send her a message, Daniel suggested, pulling out his phone. We'll craft a text together, something reassuring. But it must be vague. Maria nodded, her mind racing. They quickly composed a message that assured Elena of her safety, but didn't divulge any details about her whereabouts or the situation. Maria, I'm okay. I'm safe. Don't worry. I'll be in touch soon. After sending the message, Maria felt a mix of relief and dread. She hated the lies, but the truth was too dangerous right now. They needed to focus on the immediate threat. Gabriella stood, her expression resolute. Let's get moving. I'll drive us to the Attorney General's office. We need to ensure this evidence is presented before they can intervene. As they left the building, Maria's instincts screamed that they were being watched. She glanced back, scanning for any sign of the black SUV or anyone lurking too closely. The streets were bustling with activity, but the sense of urgency hung in the air like a thick fog. They piled into Gabriella's car, and she drove with purpose through the city streets. Maria kept her eyes peeled, wary of every shadow and corner, convinced that the moment she let her guard down, they would strike. After what felt like an eternity, they arrived at the Attorney General's office, a tall, imposing structure with a sign that gleamed in the afternoon sun. Maria took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. This was it, the moment that could change everything. As they stepped inside the building, Maria felt a surge of adrenaline. She was finally taking a stand. But the reality of the danger still loomed over her like a dark cloud. With every step, she reminded herself of the lives at stake, of the children who would play in that community center, and of the responsibility she bore. Gabriella led the way to a conference room where they would meet with the Attorney General. The walls felt like they were closing in, but Maria straightened her shoulders and prepared to confront the storm head-on. The door opened, and a woman in her 40s entered. A confident, no-nonsense figure with sharp features and a commanding presence. I'm Attorney General Maria Salazar. She introduced herself, her voice steady and authoritative. Gabriella, thank you for bringing this to me. Thank you for meeting with us on such short notice, Gabriella replied, gesturing to Maria. This is Maria Diaz, and she has critical evidence regarding the Eastside Community Center project. Attorney General Salazar's gaze locked onto Maria, her expression shifting to one of intense focus. Let's hear what you have, Ms. Diaz. With her heart racing, Maria took a deep breath and began to lay out her findings, detailing the corruption that had plagued the project and the dangers posed to the community. As she spoke, she felt the weight of her words, the urgency of the situation pressing down on her. The Attorney General listened attentively, taking notes and asking pointed questions. Maria felt a mix of hope and fear. Hope that this could lead to real change, and fear that they might not believe her or that they would be too late. As Maria finished her presentation, Attorney General Salazar leaned back in her chair, her expression contemplative. "This is serious, Ms. Diaz. If what you say is true, we need to act quickly. I will personally oversee the investigation into these claims." Maria's breath caught in her throat. "You believe me?" "I don't have to believe you," Salazar replied. "I have the evidence. The real question is how quickly we can mobilize our resources to prevent this construction from proceeding. We need to get a stop work order issued immediately." Maria felt a swell of relief. "I just want to protect my community. They deserve to be safe." "You've done the right thing by coming forward," Salazar assured her. "But it won't be easy. Powerful people will fight back, and they will try to discredit you." "I'm not afraid," Maria stated, her voice steady. "I won't back down." Salazar nodded, respect evident in her gaze. "Good. You'll need that resolve. We'll arrange for your protection during the investigation. In the meantime, I want you to stay in touch with Gabriela and report any suspicious activity you notice." Maria agreed, feeling a sense of purpose surging through her. This was her chance to make a real difference, to stand up against the corruption that had threatened her family and her community. As they concluded the meeting, Maria felt a flicker of hope sparking within her. They had taken the first step toward justice, but the path ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges. She would need to remain vigilant, not just for herself, but for everyone who depended on her courage. As they walked out of the office, Maria stole a glance back, her heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and determination. The fight was just beginning, and she was ready to face whatever came next.